death of Rachel Moore, 2 years to the month here since she was killed.
The rape, the killing, the months-long hunt for a suspect, and finally the capture.
How they found Marin's body the day they arrived to the scene. They found blood all over her face, bruising all over her bodies, other graphic images.
When the verdict came down, it took just 46 minutes to be found guilty on all the charges brought to him.
Hoping for maximum sentence for all the crimes that he had been convicted of.
When I heard the verdict, I could just feel a complete release.
She almost asked him to keep her daughter safe. It was 1 a.m. on New Year's Eve. Her daughter was about to walk home alone in the dark, and she was worried enough that she nearly called out to a stranger passing on the street, nearly asked him to walk with her, make sure she got there. She stopped herself. Her daughter walked. An hour passed. Then another. The phone never rang. 4 weeks later, police found her body 200 yards from her own front door, inside a storage cupboard, hidden behind rubbish that had been deliberately packed against her. When investigators went back through the CCTV footage, they found him. Same street, 3 minutes ahead of her daughter. A man who had been watching her walk past his window for months, living in the building directly opposite hers. He had been following her that night before she ever left the doorstep. The same stranger her mother had almost asked to protect her. She had come within 2 seconds of handing her daughter directly to the person who killed her. She did not know. She could not have known. He left his building 3 minutes before she did, which means he had been watching long enough to know exactly when she would. Drop a comment with your city and what time it is where you are, because wherever you are right now, you're inside, you're safe, and she was only 200 yards from home. You made it. I'm Rust. If you're new here, subscribe. I put out a new case every single week. Go grab yourself a slice of warm peach cobbler and get comfortable. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave you. ANUBIS. New Year's Eve is supposed to be the one night a year that feels different from all the rest. It is the night everyone agrees, all at once, to let go of what hurt them and believe that something better is coming. In Kingston upon Hull, England, on the 31st of December, 2002, people were doing exactly that. Pubs were full. Streets were loud. Everyone had somewhere to be. Rachel Moran had somewhere to be too. She was 21 years old. She was 6 feet tall, which she wore without apology. She had this way of seeing good in people even when they had not earned it yet. She had grown up in Ireland, the youngest of 4 children, and her father called her the baby of the family. That was not a criticism. He said it the way you say it when you mean the one who holds everything together. She had wanted to be a vet when she was little. By the time she was older, she was working in a creche, looking after babies, and she adored it. That says something about a person. The job she chose and the way she talked about it says something very specific. She was planning to go back to college in the new year to study catering because she wanted to become a chef. She was not drifting. She was building something. At Hull College, she had studied entertainment and cabaret, and that was where she met Mark Shepard in 2001. They moved into a 1-bedroom flat on the Orchard Park estate, less than a mile from her family home on Hull Road. That detail matters. She chose to live close to them. She was 21 years old with her own flat and her own boyfriend, and she still wanted to be close enough to walk home. She and Mark had recently got 2 kittens. Their names were Speedy Tomato and Batman. Rachel doted on them. They had made a plan for the holidays. While Mark visited his mother for Christmas, Rachel would stay in the flat with the kittens. When he got back, she would go out for New Year's Eve and he would stay with them. That was the arrangement. That was the plan. It was a simple plan. The kind of plan that assumes everything is going to go the way you said it would. On New Year's Eve, Rachel went out to the pub with friends and her brother John. Her mother Wanda was at the family home on Hall Road. At around 1:15 in the morning, Wanda was still awake, reading, when John and Rachel came home. John went straight to bed. Rachel stayed up with her mom. Wanda suggested Rachel give Mark a call to wish him a happy new year. Rachel picked up the phone and dialed the number for their flat. The call rang out. She tried his mobile. Someone picked up, but it was not Mark. It was a mutual friend. Rachel could hear a party in the background. Mark had been invited to a house party and had agreed to go. Rachel was not happy. Not because of the party. Because it meant the kittens had been left alone. Then Mark's phone ran out of credit, and she could no longer reach him. Think about what she did not do in that moment. She did not cry. She did not argue. She changed her shoes. She had slipped out of the room, and Wanda had assumed she went to bed. Then Rachel reappeared, walked toward the front door, and told her mom goodbye. Wanda followed her outside and asked where she was going. Rachel said she was going home to be with the kittens and make sure they were okay. It was dark. It was cold. It was New Year's Eve, which meant there were almost no taxis anywhere. Wanda did not want her daughter walking alone at night. As the two of them stood outside talking, a man walked past on the street. Wanda was so worried that she almost called out to him. Almost asked a stranger to walk with her daughter and make sure she got home safely. She stopped herself. She did not call out. Rachel set off walking. Her mother stood in the doorway and called after her. Rachel turned and told her she would ring as soon as she got home. 30 minutes passed. The phone did not ring. Wanda called Rachel's mobile. No answer. She called again. No answer. She tried the flat's home number. No answer. She tried to think of where Rachel might be. Maybe she had gone looking for Mark. Maybe she had stopped at someone's house. But the minutes kept moving forward, and the phone stayed silent, and the reasons she was telling herself started to sound less convincing. 2 hours passed with no word and no sign of her daughter. Wanda was exhausted. She told herself that in the morning everything would be fine, and she went to bed. When daylight came, Wanda's phone finally rang. She ran downstairs. She was already preparing herself for relief, for Rachel's voice telling her she was sorry, that she was fine, that the kittens were fed. But it was not Rachel. It was her other daughter, also named Wanda, calling to wish her mom a happy new year. Wanda told her husband Ray and her son John that Rachel had not called. John tried Rachel's mobile. Silence. He tried the flat's home phone. And then there was something. The line was engaged. That meant someone was there. Someone was using that phone. Wanda called back 5 minutes later. The call connected. Mark answered. He told her Rachel was not there. He said he had assumed Rachel was still staying with the family. He had been out all night and arrived back at the flat at around 7 that morning. He had gone straight to bed. The flat was exactly as he had left it. The kittens had not been fed. There was nothing, not a single sign, that Rachel had come back at all. Wanda and John went to the flat immediately. Mark was right. She had not made it home. There was nothing there to suggest she had even come close. Wanda knew. You can call it instinct if you want to. But it was not instinct. It was a mother who had known her daughter for 21 years. Hearing nothing for 8 hours on the night her daughter had promised to call. Mark tried to reassure her. He said Rachel knew many people, that she could easily have ended up at someone's house. It had not even been 12 hours yet. Wanda was not waiting 12 hours. She and John went directly to the police station on Priory Road and reported Rachel missing. Detective Superintendent Paul Davison was leading the investigation. He would later explain that the first question investigators ask is whether a disappearance fits the person. Was this something Rachel would do? Had she ever done anything like this before? The answer, from everyone who knew her, was no. Trevor Watts, who also worked for Humberside Police, said it was immediately clear that something was seriously wrong. More than 40 officers were part of the initial investigation. Rachel's family came in and gave witness statements.
And I said, just, your father will kill me if he knows that let you walk home on your own. And he said, I can't even put you in the car because I've had a couple of drinks. She said, it doesn't matter because I'm all right.
Wanda mentioned to the police someone who could be a witness, the man who had walked past them on the street.
And he was wearing a shirt in a similar colour to the blue one you're wearing today.
Detectives began working to find what had happened to Rachel. And as they did, they also looked closely at Mark. There had been an argument that night. Everyone knew that. And in any investigation like this, the question cannot wait. The uncomfortable, necessary question. Could the person closest to her be involved?
So I don't remember her talking to her either. I don't remember talking to her too. She won't have none of it, so I ended up going to my friend's house and because she didn't want to come. I got a bit upset with her.
Mark had come to police attention early. Paul Davison noted he did not seem worried or upset, which had struck them as strange. They put him under surveillance and checked his alibi carefully. The surveillance turned up nothing, and the alibi held. He had nothing to do with Rachel's disappearance. That left them back at square one, with the worst possibility now looking more and more likely. Rachel had come to harm at the hands of a stranger. Stranger abductions are thankfully rare, but the evidence was pointing somewhere uncomfortable. Her bank accounts had not had a single penny withdrawn. Her mobile phone had made no calls and sent no texts. None of her clothes were missing from her flat. None of the signs of someone who left by choice. Police turned to the closed-circuit television cameras covering the area, and they found her. Cameras picked Rachel up passing Jackson's on Hall Road, giving investigators a timestamp and a direction of travel. All available resources went into the search. Helicopters went up. Dogs went out with their handlers. Officers on horseback covered the terrain. The Humberside Police diving team was brought in. For Rachel's family watching each new resource arrive, the situation was becoming impossible to deny. The media coverage was relentless. And in the public appeals going out, Rachel was described as looking more like a teenager than a woman in her 20s. Her family begged anyone who knew anything to come forward. Saturday, the 11th of January, 2003. The divers were working the Barmston Drain, a canal that had long served as a dumping ground for rubbish. Moving carefully through layer after layer of waste, they found it. A Nike trainer, very similar to the one Rachel had changed into at her mother's house on New Year's Eve. They kept searching. The next day, the drain gave up something else. A handbag found inside a bin bag, deliberately placed there, not dropped by accident. Inside, a mobile phone, makeup, and one item that removed all remaining doubt. An Irish passport belonging to Rachel Moran. Someone had put that bag there hoping it would never be recovered. They had underestimated what was coming. Police staged a reconstruction of Rachel's last known movements. An officer who resembled her wore the same outfit and walked the same route. Several people came forward afterward, but most of their recollections had been blurred by alcohol on New Year's Eve. What the reconstruction did generate was access to new closed-circuit television footage from a local school. Poor quality, barely usable. But in the top left corner of the screen, a figure could just be made out. Officers believed that figure was Rachel. If they were right, she had been less than 200 meters from her own front door. Think about that for a moment. She was nearly home. It also meant she had taken a darker route than police had first assumed, not the well-lit road they had expected. And as the footage continued to play, something else appeared. A figure moving behind her. Running. If Rachel had vanished from somewhere near this point, that figure was someone police needed to find urgently. Officer Trevor Watts explained that 99% of bodies are found within 1 mile of the last known sighting of a person. A decision was made. Every single home within 1.5 miles of Rachel's flat would be searched. More than 100 officers were brought in. It became the largest search operation ever conducted by Humberside Police. The time and manpower required were enormous. But if there was any chance, any at all, that Rachel was somewhere in that radius, they were taking it. Tuesday, the 28th of January, 2003. The searches began. Each team consisted of a search specialist and 2 police officers. As more homes were cleared, Paul Davison received a call in the incident room. A police officer on the line, deeply distressed. What he was about to say would end the search for Rachel Moran. PC Steve Dennison and his team had come to 19 Nash Court. The owner was a young man. He had a male friend visiting. The flat was dirty, rubbish scattered throughout. The team moved through the rooms with the owner cooperating, showing them each space. There was no sign of Rachel. There was one thing left. The bin cupboard, assigned to number 19, shared by the apartment block. They asked the owner for the key. He said he did not have one. Then he said he did not know where it was. Then he said it might be at his mother's. 3 different answers. For a key to a storage cupboard that was part of his own property. The officers made clear they were not leaving without searching it. Find the key. Find it now. He found it. Handed it over. Went back inside. The door opened. Rubbish. A carpet. Boxes. Mixed bags. The team began removing it methodically. And then PC Dennison turned back to clear more and realized his colleague had stopped. Was not moving. Was standing completely still, looking into the cupboard. PC Dennison moved to see what his colleague was looking at. There was a human leg among the rubbish. 4 weeks. Ended here. Rachel Moran's remains were discovered in that 3-foot by 3-foot space, wrapped in a sheet, hidden behind rubbish that had been deliberately packed against her. The flat was 200 yards from her home. Both men were arrested immediately on suspicion of murder. The owner of the flat was 23-year-old Michael Little. His visiting friend was named Mark Fuller. Mark immediately insisted he had no knowledge of any of this. Michael told the officers his friend had known nothing. Transport arrived for Mark Fuller. He was taken away, and PC Steve Dennison was left alone in the flat with Michael Little. Michael Little began to speak. Dennison took out his notebook. "I'm so glad you found her. I've wanted to tell someone for ages. It's such a weight off my chest. I saw the police stuff on the news and just hoped they came here. I've not told anybody else. Nobody knows. I can't be a normal person doing this. I must be evil or something. I saw her that night walking alone, so I went over and spoke to her. She came back here for a drink and we chatted for a while, but ended up arguing. I think I walked out of the room or something, and when I came back, she'd gone into the kitchen and was stood at the side with her back to me. When I went near her, she turned around and I saw a small knife in her hand. I have read a lot of these cases, and I will tell you honestly, that phrase has stayed with me. A weight off my chest. A man who spent 4 weeks watching an entire city search for a woman he had hidden 200 yards from where she disappeared. And what he felt when it was finally over was relief. What do you make of Michael Little saying that? Leave it in the comments. One word is enough. She slashed out and cut him on his arm. That was what Michael Little said. That was the story he walked into that police station carrying, and he signed his name to it. Wanda heard the news from investigators. Her daughter had been found. There would be no more waiting, no more hoping, no more checking her phone. She told them she was relieved, which is a word that means almost nothing in that context. Relieved is what you feel when traffic clears. What Wanda felt that day is something the English language does not have a word for. Michael Little was taken to Queen's Garden Police Station and booked in. In his interview, PC Steve Dennison placed a transcript in front of him. The same statement Michael had made at the flat. His own words written out. Michael confirmed it was accurate. He confirmed it was what he had said, and then he signed it. But the police needed something else. They needed to know exactly where he had been on New Year's Eve. Every hour. Every movement. And what they found was not what any of them expected. He had gone out with friends that night. He had tried to speak to a woman he had feelings for, a woman he had been thinking about. She rejected him. She left with one of his friends. At some point after that, he ran into someone else he knew and was invited to a party. He agreed to go. He stayed until just after midnight and then decided to head home. When investigators mapped out the route he would have taken, something shifted in the room. He had walked right past them. He had been wearing a shirt in a similar color to the blue one he was wearing during his interview. He was the man who had passed Rachel and Wanda on the street that night. He was the man that Wanda had almost called out to. She had nearly asked him, a stranger, to walk her daughter home and keep her safe. Think about that for a moment. She nearly asked the man who killed her daughter to protect her. When investigators pulled the CCTV footage from outside Jackson's on Hall Road, they found a male figure on camera 3 minutes before Rachel came into view. They ran the footage again. Then again. It was Michael Little. And the footage from the school. The recording showing a figure running up behind Rachel from behind. That person was now believed to be Michael as well. He had been ahead of her earlier in the night. Which meant at some point he had stepped off the path, waited, let her walk past him, and then followed. The post-mortem results came through shortly after. Rachel had suffered 27 serious injuries to her back, head, and neck, inflicted from behind with a 12-inch kitchen knife that was never recovered. She had no defensive wounds, none. Not a single mark on her hands or arms that would suggest she ever had the chance to fight back. The severity of several of her injuries indicated that whoever did this was not in a panic. This was not a moment of fear or confusion. The force used was deliberate. Rachel's blood was found inside the flat, concentrated in the hallway. There was mud on the back of her legs, which investigator Paul Davison said indicated she had been dragged across the grass and into the building. There was no evidence, none at all, that she had ever attacked him. And then there was something else. Something the family had not been told yet. Something that changed the weight of every detail that had come before. Swabs taken during the post-mortem confirmed she had been violated. A decision was made not to pursue that charge at this stage, because investigators could not establish with the legal certainty required exactly when it had occurred. Read that again slowly. Because what it means is that even establishing the full truth of what happened to Rachel, in a court of law, required a kind of certainty that the circumstances of her death made almost impossible to prove. If you have followed this story this far, and you think someone should answer for every part of what she suffered, leave a comment. One word is enough. Now here is what detectives believed happened on that path. He may have tried to speak to her as she walked. She made it clear she was not interested. That would have been the second rejection of that night, after the woman at the party had left with his friend. And in that moment, something in him broke in a direction that led to one of the most violent deaths Hull had seen in years. He had very few friends. The ones he had described him in ways that painted a picture you do not easily forget. He fantasized about women. He claimed to have a girlfriend, which his friends all knew was not true. When investigators asked him to describe her, Michael said she was a slim woman, standing at 6 foot with blonde hair. Those details matched Rachel Moran exactly. She had lived in the block of flats directly opposite his. The route she always took, when visiting her parents, went directly past his window, where he would sit for hours at a time, drawing, staring out. It is likely he had seen her before. More than once. Despite having signed the statement at the flat, his story was already beginning to shift. Now he said Rachel had been the one to approach him, that she had asked to walk with him because she wanted to feel safer. He said an argument had broken out between them and that he had struck her across the face with the back of his hand. And then he told an officer, and these are his exact words, "I lost it. I picked up a knife and stabbed her. I want some help to speak to a counselor or something." A counselor. After 27 serious injuries inflicted from behind. After dragging a body. After hiding a handbag. After spending New Year's Day going about his business while Rachel's family searched for her. He wanted to speak to someone. The police were not buying any part of his self-defense account. The evidence did not fit it in any direction. No defensive wounds on her. No injuries on him consistent with a struggle. The weapon gone. Nothing to suggest she had ever threatened a man who outweighed her considerably. As for Mark Fuller, the other man brought in for questioning, he was released without charge. Investigators determined he had absolutely nothing to do with what happened to Rachel. On the 31st of January, 2003, 23-year-old Michael Little was formally charged with the murder of Rachel Moran. He entered a plea of not guilty. This was going to trial. At Hull Crown Court, Michael Little stood in the dock and the case began. The evidence against him was already substantial. The CCTV placing him on her route. The blood in his flat. Rachel's handbag disposed of. His signed statement. His own words to the officer in custody. His multiple shifting accounts. People inside that courtroom were quietly asking the same question. What defense could he possibly offer? And then they found out. His story changed again. This time he said Rachel had come back to his flat willingly, and that the murder had actually been carried out by his friend Mark Fuller. He told the jury that Mark had walked in unexpectedly, found him with Rachel, and in a fit of rage and jealousy had, in Michael's own words, gone absolutely crazy. He said Mark had used a carving knife. He said Mark had threatened to kill him and his entire family if he did not take the blame. He told the court, "I told him I was not going to help him, and he said I had no choice. I was extremely traumatized. I just didn't want to know. I just wished everything would go back to the way it was." Mark Fuller took the witness stand. He was questioned in detail and at length. He denied any part in Rachel's death. He had attended a party that night and then gone to his mother's house in the early hours of the morning. There was no physical evidence connecting him to anything. He had an alibi. Prosecutor Geoffrey Marson QC called Michael's account what it was, a pack of lies. Because here is what the jury was looking at. CCTV footage placing Michael on Rachel's route. Rachel's blood in his flat. Her handbag disposed of. His signed confession. His multiple contradictory statements. No injuries on him. The full account of what Rachel had suffered, inflicted from behind, with no defensive wounds anywhere on her body. When that account was read aloud in the courtroom, members of Rachel's family stood up from the public gallery and walked out. They could not sit there and hear it. If you have stayed with this story this far and felt the weight of that, hit the like button. Not for the channel, because you know what she went through and you think it deserves to be heard. Prosecutor Marson built his case piece by piece. The CCTV evidence. The blood. The handbag. Michael's own inconsistent stories. The absence of any injuries on him that supported a struggle. The absence of any evidence that Rachel had ever been a threat to him. Each element stacked against the next. It was a very strong case. But Michael Little was sitting in that dock with a not guilty plea and a story that pointed the finger at someone else entirely. The jury still had to decide. Did you see where this was heading? Leave it in the comments. Because what they came back with either gave Rachel's family the one thing they had been waiting for, or it left a door open that none of them could afford to think about. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. 9 hours after a 3-week trial, and every minute of that wait felt like a year to the people sitting outside that courtroom. Rachel's father, Ray, watched the clock. The longer the jury stayed out, the more the dread built in him. Detective Superintendent Paul Davison later admitted he shared that fear. The longer it took, the more he worried they were going to lose this. Wanda had been present every single day of that trial. She had sat through every piece of evidence, every witness, every lie Michael Little's defense had constructed. But when the moment finally came, she could not make herself walk into that courtroom to hear the verdict. 9 months of waiting, and she stood outside. The courtroom went silent. The verdict was read. The jury had not believed a single word of Michael's defense. He was convicted of murder. Michael Little showed no emotion. Think about that for a moment. The man who had stuffed Rachel into a 3-foot square cupboard in the building where he worked stood in that courtroom and showed nothing. Not relief. Not regret. Nothing. Paul Davison said afterward that the hard work and dedication of the police had finally brought her killer to justice. And then he said something else. Something that has stayed with everyone who heard it. If we had not found the body, Rachel's grave would have been that 3-foot square cupboard. That was the plan Michael Little had made for her. Before sentencing, a letter written by Wanda was read aloud to the court. She described herself as a physical wreck. She described her husband Ray as a man who had been destroyed. For my husband Ray, she wrote, it has destroyed him. At times he has felt he has had nothing to live for. The loss of Rachel has severely traumatized my family. Life will never be the same again. We have not just lost Rachel. We have lost part of each other. When the family came out of court, Rachel's older sister Carrie said 5 words that contained everything. We feel no elation, only emptiness. Rachel's boyfriend, Mark, released a statement. My biggest regret is that Rachel was taken from me, and I did not get the chance to say goodbye. I still cannot, and do not believe that Rachel has gone. He was not wrong to say that. She had not gone. She was just not there anymore. Mr. Justice Hooper did not hold back in his sentencing remarks. He noted that Michael's attempt to blame an innocent man for Rachel's murder demonstrated, in the judge's own words, a lack of concern for the truth and a total lack of remorse. The judge said he would write to the Home Secretary and recommend that a minimum tariff be set for the life sentence. In 2007, High Court Judge Mr. Justice Beaton made that formal. Michael Little's minimum term was set at 25 years. 25 years is a floor, not a ceiling. But here is what the verdict could not fix. In 2010, something happened that Ray and Wanda had quietly watched building for years. Rachel's sister Vanda passed away. The official cause was complications from chickenpox exposure, compounded by the diabetes she had been living with. By the time she died, she had lost both of her legs. She was partially blind. Ray and Wanda knew what had really happened. They said it plainly. Vanda had never recovered from Rachel's death. From the morning Rachel disappeared on New Year's Day until the day Michael Little was convicted 10 months later, Vanda had stopped treating her own illness. She had stopped going to appointments. She had stopped fighting for herself. She had simply stopped. Ray said, "He took away part of Wanda on that New Year's morning. That full year I put down to Michael Little. 1 man, 2 daughters. Vanda was later buried next to her sister. If that lands somewhere specific in your chest right now, hit the like button. Not because of how the algorithm works. Because sometimes you need to mark the moment when something truly breaks through." Detective Superintendent Paul Davison led the investigation from the very first call until its close. He retired from the police force in 2012, having reached the rank of chief superintendent after 30 years in the job. In retirement, he wrote a book about her case. He titled it simply Rachel. The book was published with the blessing of Wanda and Ray. Davison had stayed in contact with the family across the years. He spoke about them in terms that were difficult to hear coming from a man who had spent 3 decades watching what people are capable of doing to one another. They are incredible people, he said. During the investigation, I got a glimpse of the impact losing Rachel had on them, of that gut-wrenching sense of loss. Every second is like a lifetime of pain for them, and it is never going to end. They have shown such incredible fortitude and strength throughout. A man who had seen things most people will spend their entire lives never seeing, and this family's grief was still something that stopped him. Rachel was 23 years old. She was walking home. She had a life and a boyfriend and a future that was, as Davison once put it, clearly filled with so much promise. She never made it through the door. If you want to make sure you do not miss cases like this one, subscribe now. Because the next story on this channel is something most people have never heard of, and once you hear it, you will understand exactly why it has been buried. Someone already knows which window is yours and when you leave. I have videos on this channel about how watchers choose targets, what your routine is already telling someone you've never thought about. Think about who sees you regularly. At least one of them knows your schedule better than you do.